We are recording now.
Welcome to the Moonshine Militia.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Militia podcast. And as you can see, we have a very special guest. I say special because he is
Special
special.
needs.
He is special. For the third episode of the Moonshine Militia podcast, we have with us Santa
Fourth
himself.
amigo.
Fourth amigo. And Santa himself. How you doing,
Doing
Mr.
good, brother. Doing good.
What was it? Were you eat? Was it today you were eating steak?
Today I had,
Or was it yesterday? No, it was today you were out.
yeah, we went to Texas Roadhouse today. Yeah.
Texas Roadhouse, that's right.
Yeah.
Did you have steak or no?
Chicken.
Chicken. You go to Texas Roadhouse and you don't have steak?
I ate chicken. I like my own steaks, man. I got New York strip steaks up there ready to go, man. I do my own steaks, but they got some pretty good chicken, and I like the that onion, that fried onion thing, like a blooming onion.
Yeah.
Texas onion is really.
They do got some good stuff there. I haven't been there in a while. And,
Yeah, it's real close to the house. We go there all the time.
I normally, when I'm out and about for work, when I stop for steak, I normally stop at Longhorn. But it's been hit or miss lately because I like that they have the seasoned butter they use on their steaks, and that's what I like.
And they have aged beef. It's really good.
Yeah, it's good
Yeah,
stuff.
last time we went there not too long ago, we got a gift card. I guess Ann did for Christmas from somebody. Remember who it was? Maybe her aunt or mom, not her aunt. Or anyway, so we went. Been a while, and I've never understood it. The Longhorn here used to be big, but it's not as busy anymore. Prices aren't really bad. It's not like it's really super expensive or anything. Really good beef. Good aged beef. It's for the price you pay, it's not bad. I mean, it's a pretty good deal, I thought.
Yeah, I like Longhorn.
Yep.
All right, so this is how the podcast work. All right, I'm going to give you some questions, and I've hooked up electrodes to your testicles, and if you get the questions incorrectly, I'm sorry. You know what happens. So the first question, we're just going to delve in a little bit here. What has sparked? Now I know you've been doing it for a long time, right? So initially, if you think back, what initially sparked your interest in making moonshine?
Well, I grew up in an area where it was a very traditional thing. It was quite fairly common. A lot of people did it there back then.
All right.
And that and the reading the Foxfire books, kind of sparked a little bit of an interest in seeing how it was done. And
so it wasn't like a family tradition. It was something that
no, it wasn't a family thing. My grandmother made wine, and family made wine, and there is some now that I've later found out, but back then I had no idea. But some of my ancestors, were involved in it very in a big way. Guy's name Willie Clay Call. And I do remember a great grandfather, Willie P. Call, and this is cousins to them. Willie Clay Call was a buddy of Junior Johnson's, and he was called the Uncatchable. And him and Junior, before NASCAR got started, they drove all the time and worked on motors and souped them up, and and even Junior, helped dubbing the Uncatchable because he never got caught delivering shine. And he was known to be a pretty crazy driver and one of the best. I don't think he never drove, I don't think, in any NASCAR or anything with Junior, but they were very, very good friends, very tight throughout their life. And he wasn't in NASCAR, but he was around while it was being done. And That's I guess that would be if I had a family claim to fame, that would be it. But I didn't know about him growing up, and that's something they didn't talk about.
So about how old were you when you first started, you say?
I'm like 12, 13.
Damn.
As kids, we were little kids. We did a lot of things at a younger age. I guess in the hills there wasn't a lot of entertainment to do. There's not a whole lot to do there, so people kind of look for things to do, and fooling around kind of comes early. Sex kind of comes early, and you know, I was growing weed at 13 and making a little shine at 13, and I'd already lost my virginity at that age as well. So
Damn.
we were doing quite a few fun things out in the woods, when we were younger.
Fun things, fun things.
But it was just something, I mean, it wasn't just the need for alcohol because we grew up in a dry area, and that sounds like, oh, I bet it's hard to get. No, we could ride our bikes to the bootleggers and they'd sell to us as long as you push that button at the window. They'd sell you whatever early times or whatever beer, Schlitz, PBR, whatever you want.
Hmm.
They usually
TBR.
had early times or Kessler. That was the two most common liquors that you would get. Early times being the most common. I grew up on early times.
Damn. You're still drinking that today.
Yeah, I like it. It's not bad.
Now, I know everybody has a different process. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people do have a different process for making, their their shine, what they do. Walk me through your typical, what you like to do. All the way from sourcing your materials to the final product for what you like to do for your, like
Uh,
you like to do your grappa.
right.
That's one thing that everybody likes to do. So
Yeah.
walk me through that.
Well,
Uh,
that's like
don't,
like
don't,
a
give away,
grub or a grain.
don't give away any secrets, though. I know you got
Yeah,
some
I'm not
there,
giving it away my grappa secret. Nice try, by the way. But uh, I grew up, I guess, doing cornmeal and sugar. That was the most common thing. Cornmeal and sugar, and any conversions going on is basically cornmeal flavored sugar shine. It's about the way you could explain it. And that was called a thin mash. And pretty much everybody that made moonshine back then, that's what they used. There wasn't a lot of converting. You didn't find malted barley in the mountains. There was no store to go to get that. So it's pretty much you know, cornmeal sugar and bread yeast, and that's all you could find. Wasn't any Amazon to order stuff from or any of that stuff. You just get what you could. But grappa came much later in life. Most of the stuff I did was just the cornmeal, and sugar for a long, long time. That's just all I knew how to do. Or wasn't exposed to a lot of books on how to do it. There was no internet. Pretty much the Foxfire book, and it had they talked about grains and stuff, but it's just we didn't have access to any kind of diastatic grains or anything like that, much less know about it. But as I got older, I took some science classes and I always had that angle, looking back, and I'd try to apply, growing weed or making moonshine or doing some other little mad experiments that I did, try to, learn as I learned the actual science, I try to apply it to that. And so I always had that angle that I would look at or how this applies to, making shine or, like biology and other things. So I always, kind of looked at that, but most of everything I made was the cornmeal thin mash for a long, long time. First few times I did it, scorched the shit out of it, and it was horrible. But we all drank it anyway. We're stoked that we were drinking alcohol that we made. Just stupid little kids, having fun.
Now, you mentioned the science thing, and now you're known a lot by people out here in the community as the science guy.
Right.
Anybody has any questions about the science with making liquor, you're the guy to go to. Ask Santa. Ask Santa. I got a question for you, Santa. That's what everybody says. So, where did that start? I mean,
Well,
how did that come about?
I don't know. I've always, I guess, understood the science aspect of it, and from all the science classes that I took, throughout high school and college, and I always, like I said, I always would apply what I learned to shining, and saw how it crossed, what they were doing, and the experiments that we're doing, how that cross with making shine, and how it could cross involved with it. Um, but it was always a fascination. It was always something I thought was cool as shit. And something that I always um, I didn't do it my whole life. It wasn't like, I was that old timer shiner back in the mountains doing it all the time. There was, other things that I, did, but it was uh, it was always something that I had a fascination with, I guess, because it was traditionally done there, and of course I like to drink, so you know.
That helps.
But yeah, there's I know the basic fundamentals in how it applies in science, but there's a certain levels of science that even escapes me. I'm by far the number one authority on it. There's a lot more to be known than I understand as far as even the science goes, but that would be pretty, I'm not gonna be cocky or nothing, but that'd be a pretty advanced science topic, and you know, I'll reserve that to the advanced scientists that know it on that level. I know a little bit about it, but the thing about me is if I don't know, I'll be the first to tell you I don't know. Let's find out or something.
Yeah.
We can get on here and find out, and I can use educated guesses and my scientific background to help fill in some voids and questions. But I don't bullshit around if I'm not understanding something. Somebody asks, I'll be like, I don't know. Good question. Let's find out.
Good. Good. Now, throughout your shining life, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in making shine, and how did you overcome them?
Getting away with it, and nobody finding out, none of the adults finding out, and all us youngins getting drunk, and nobody telling on anybody, and being able to do that. Sneaking out, of course, sneaking stuff out to do it.
Did you
You
ever
know,
get caught when you were little?
got caught drunk, yeah, a few times. We never told how what we were doing and stuff. But yeah, got caught a few times. Yeah, yeah.
Get that ass
I
whooping?
was, yeah, I got my ass whipped. I was such a wild child though, man, and it was a different time. Back
Yeah.
then, parents, hell, you go out and play, parents didn't see you till, the lights when it came on, street lights came on. That's about the time you have your ass back home. And, it's just a different world than today. We could go out and play and be away from the house, and we'd have helicopter parents hovering over us, worrying about everything that we did. Cause, you know, it, these days it'd be called neglect. Those days it was just normal.
Yeah.
These kids go out and play all day and come back home that night dirty and tired and hungry.
Yep. Yeah, I know that. Now, over your years, what are some unique techniques that you may have come across and you stick with using?
Well, one of the technique that I'm known for, of course, is making the bypass. That was something that came about when in the 80s. By this point in time, I'm using a keg steel. I never had a thumper when I ran my little pressure cooker still. That went from a pressure cooker into just a coil of copper. It was simple fraction, it was about as simple as you get, basic, and it didn't do as well. But keg steels were pretty popular back then. Uh, the thing about them, we didn't have all these ferals dwelled on it, and clean outs and all that stuff. So clean out was a bitch. It was a pain in the ass, and that's really my biggest drawback about the keg steels was how difficult it was to clean them out and have pressure washers with, you know, heads that spin around in all directions that you can just stick down in there and spray. We're using a garden hose and shaking it, and that's about the extent of all we can do. Um, but the bypass, making that bypass, I made a lot of, liquor, and I started discovering about tails, heads, tails, and hearts on your own, and I didn't know anything about all that, and learned a little bit in the science, and then learned how to make better cuts, as time went on. But I always got blending. I called it blending. I think today they call it, what do they call it today? Um, Mirroring. We
Mm.
called it blending. We didn't know what to call it. We just called it blending, but we could tell that those, acetone heads were blending in with everything else, and found out, they kind of came early, and so I realized the stuff inside uh, the thumper had a lot of acetone in it. I'm like, that stuff's sitting in here throughout the whole run. It's just this whole run's just percolating through the damn heads. No wonder it carries over smearing and blending. So I came up with a little plumbing bypass and bypassed it, and would taste and do my cussing. As soon as I got to the hearts, I'd switch that thing over and wait, and it'd heat up, and do its double distillation, and all of a sudden, boom, it was in the hearts, and
No
it
acetone.
reduced the smearing a lot. And I was like, wow, this is a lot better, and but I never we never used the thumper for an infusion flavors and all that stuff. That was somebody else much later. I think Rick Gibson maybe was one of the first ones to do that in the Shine community. I think Rick was the one who came up with the infusion and putting an infuser on your thumper, and but I just had the bypass, bypassed it and did that, and then I figured, you know people just would figure that out. I didn't really think anything about it, and so I guess maybe, I don't know, 8, 7 years, 7, 6, 7 years ago, um, was on the Moonshine group with North Georgia and stuff. That's what a lot of people were on. I followed it throughout the news groups and, distiller.org and all this stuff throughout time. But I was talking to Tyler Johnston, I think it was, and he was asking about smearing and what's causing his smearing, and talking about his, thumper and stuff. And I'm like, well, you just need to make your bypass. And he's like, what? Bypass? So I drew a little crude drawing out and posted it for him to read, and it's like next thing you know, North Georgia and all the steel companies and everybody's putting bypasses on all the rigs and stuff, and I kind of explained everything to him, and I guess it made a lot of sense to a lot of people, and they're like, well, damn, this is good as sliced bread. Why don't we ever think of this, and next thing you know, everybody's got one, and everybody's like, "Are you gonna do patent?" And they're violating your idea and all this. I'm like, "Shit, I'm not trying to patent that. I mean, how are you gonna enforce a patent in the woods on some moonshiner? You got go up to, you're using my idea, Junior. You
Yeah. Well, what did you invent that bypass for?
yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm glad. I love seeing people use it. I think it's wonderful. But since then it's been applied to jar rigs, and I never thought about using jars, and we always just use regular thumpers. But seeing people using jars was pretty amazing, and infusing with them and using that thumb bypass for those made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I was glad to see it evolve into those things too as well.
Yeah. Now, how has moonshining shaped your life and your worldview?
I'd say, it really hasn't shaped me, I'd say it's as much affected me later in life, that I've, you know, uh, I started one of the first Facebook groups on in moonshining. It was a group that a bunch of my buddies that I grew up with that we drank shine and made shine and a lot of times we didn't make it all the time. It was we could buy it pretty readily and could go to the liquor store easily, so we weren't pressured for liquor, and so I started a group, and it was during the time Facebook had just started opening. Facebook just started, and they had all these Zynga games and Farmville and all this stuff.
Yeah.
We had Mafia Wars. So I found out that I had a lot of buddies and friends back home that played Mafia Wars, and I was already involved in it and one of the earlier players in it, and got pretty high level. I used a few exploits and things like that to get really, really ultra high level. I ran a bot. Basically, it ran 24/7 automated play, and it played for me and just kept leveling me up as I'd sleep and stuff. It was always leveling up and fighting and leveling. So I had a pretty high level, Mafia Wars account, and I was started the Moonshine Mafia, so my buddies and I could help them out when people came in and picked on them. And I was at that time, I was already in the Illuminati Mafia. I wasn't the godfather of that yet, and some other mafias, that got invited into, and I was a member of those. But most importantly, the Illuminati. I was a godfather in the Illuminati Mafia. We had several godfathers. There wasn't just one. Um, but it was a pretty strong mafia. We teamed with other mafias and went to wars and stuff, and we're part of the big war, in that game and stuff. And I had a lot of buddies that would call me and say, "Man, I got this dude sitting on me. He's beating the shit out of me. I think he's using one of them bots on me. He's got my number. He's just beating me down every time I heal. He's killing me." So I'd take my big accounts and I'd go in there and I'd sit on them a while, take on a small clan and stuff. It was a lot of fun. It was, but it was crazy. That game was crazy. I mean, there were people literally spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to beef up their accounts legitimately, and it just got insane. The amount of money some of these guys were spending. Our big guy was Brian Brunaver, and he was an investment banker from California, multimillionaire. He didn't give a shit. And this dude was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this freaking game. He had probably, out of the hundreds of thousands that were playing this game, I mean, all over the world, um, he was probably in the top 10, and he was feared. he was Brian was a feared man. But I do remember I was in the Illuminati Mafia so long, and then I finally got promoted to Godfather. And I had some friends from India and China and stuff. They're like, "Well, I guess you're not going to talk to us lowly people anymore." And I'm like, "What are you talking about, man? I just got a promotion. It's no big deal. I'm the same guy." And they're like, in our culture, you're like shit, man. It means a lot. And I mean, for them, it was something that they become a part of their culture. I mean, they talk about it at breakfast, at work every
Wow.
day, and it was a big thing for these guys. Yeah, and I mean, I know some guys that are like in the government and in India, high up in the government and stuff, and they were all a part of it, and it's pretty wild. So I still have some friends that are pretty high up in the Indian government. Uh, but Chinese, no, not so much.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Damn.
But that was a lot. It never, but back to the question, it really never shaped me. I was always known as a wild guy. I always partied a lot and did a lot of things. Most I won't mention on here, but I did a lot of things. I experimented, with a lot of things, and I was known to have a good time. There's certain things I wouldn't do, needles and shit like that, but that was one of my few limits, and it's quite wild growing up. So
Yeah.
partying and drinking and doing moonshine was just part of it, you know.
Yeah.
But it influenced me as I got older, you know, and had more time to do it, and then started getting into more sophisticated distilling, I should say, and making different distillations other than just my thin mash. And so I developed as a shiner, you know, as a distiller, uh, making a lot of different things, you know, what I thought were a lot of different things. You know, I never thought about half the crazy stuff they do today. You know, it's like, okay, well, that's definitely something different. You know, it's like, you know, we didn't look for a lot of different things to do then. We just thought, you know, uh, different things would make a pretty good brandy or shine. So I started learning to make wine. That was kind of something I never was much of a beer drinker, so I never really, you know, you know, brewed in for mashed in for a beer, even though I had quite a few thin mash beers. But started getting into winemaking heavily, you know, and you know, learning all about the winemaking, you know, business and how they do it and the science behind that and the uses of chemicals, you know, that was kind of new to me. Like stopping fermentation. That's something you don't think about when you're a shiner. You know, you want
Yeah.
the fucker to ferment dry and fast as you can. But you know, as a winemaker, you know, sometimes if you want your wine to retain some sweetness, you know, you'll slap a little potassium metabisulfate in there or some potassium sorbate and kill the yeast or neuter them, and that way it never wouldn't finish dry, and you could have a sweeter, you know, wine. And learning to use those and deal with fruits, that was a big eye opener for me, and I really enjoy that.
Nice. And that's why you came to the grub.
Yeah, that,
The grub.
you know, I tried the traditional grappa, and I'll have to say my grappa sucks if you drink my traditional grappa, because traditional grappa is sugar shine with pumice and stems, and it's pretty much what a traditional grappa is. And it's so I tried it that way, and after making some wines and stuff, and it sucked. But I made this batch of wine, and I've been making some white wine, and this was before we knew Ann was a diabetic and stuff, and she liked drinking this sweet heat I made, and I was I think I was in Florida tiling her house, and I had some wine going, and I'm like, "Oh, this is we need to add some." You know, she kept an eye on the hydrometer, and it's like, "Oh, we've got to add some potassium bisulfite. We got to stop this fermentation." You know, and I told her how many teaspoons to put in, and she put in tablespoons, and it's like, "Ooh," and I tasted it when I go home, and it wasn't good. But I was like, you know, well, we can always just run it, you know, and but did let it sit a long time, and the hopes that a lot of the sulfur and stuff would work out of it, and it did. A lot of it probably flavored it, and it wasn't a bad flavor. You know, a lot of people associate some sulfurs always with a bad flavor, but it wasn't so bad, and it kind of went away, and it started tasting good after about a year, and then I bottled it up, and well, I secondary fermented it, and it was about a little over a year old, and then I decided to bottle some and distilled most of it, and ran it. It was okay. After I ran it, it was pretty good. Had some sweetness and some, you know, good flavors. But I let it sit for like another 8 months in the jars, and you know, it finished real well in the aging it in those jars. It was almost 2 years old by the time I took it out, and this was the real grappa, not the pumice and stems shit that I experimented with earlier. But this was real, like white wine, and after aging for that while in the jar, it transformed. It was a lot different than it did when it went in. I've learned since that, you know, as esterification caused it, a lot of the esters and stuff turned into a lot of flavonoids and flavors and polyphenols and all this stuff that gave it a unique flavor. And it was wow, it was good. It had a unique sweetness. I guess you've tried it.
Oh yeah.
How would you describe it? I mean, it's different than anything you've ever drank. It's kind of like drinking ouzo your first time. It's a unique
Yeah, it's
drink.
a unique flavor, and I think that uh, once I added an ice cube or two to it, and I let it set, it opened it up a lot more.
Loosed
It,
it,
it was it was even it was
yeah.
getting
It's
out of town.
I
It was
found that what the way I went distilled it. And I'm not trying to give too many secrets away, but um, I was using the deflegmator, and I wouldn't turn that thing on. I was bypassing, and then as soon as I got into the hearts, I cranked up the deflegmator, opened up the bypass, and distilled it that way. And by using the deflegmator, I compressed a lot of tails into the actual distillate because it ran at a certain proof. I think it's like 160 or something like that, and ran very consistently. Might have started out at 165 to 70, pretty much balanced out at about 160, and went all the way across the board at that. And then when I hit tails, it went from like 160, next jar 100, next jar 60. It dropped off the shelf quickly. So I didn't get into a lot of tails, and that's how I know I compressed a lot of them into that. And I think, letting those age over time, kind of everything kind of worked together is one of those, magic moments that, the stars align and everything, combined. And, kind of, I guess, in a way, stumbled into it, and the rest is,
history.
history, I guess. Yeah. But it turned out really well. It's going to be very tough to replicate, and it'll take a couple of years. I can do it. I document everything, so I've got everything written down, and there are a few other little secrets to it, but I'll have to keep those secrets.
Now, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect you found from being a moonshiner?
I'd say, to be honest, this may sound corny, but just the fellowship with other moonshiners and helping others, and making a lot of friends with it. And I get a lot of enjoyment helping other people, and seeing them, wow, for their first time, I made this. Holy shit. I have no idea I could do this. It's like, it's that, seeing people for that first time, it's like,
Yeah.
wow, they go into it thinking, this is going to suck the first 100 times, and I'll never turn out anything good because look at my equipment. I'm working with all this little
Yep.
stuff, and look with all these big guys use. There's no way I can compare with them. And then that revelation that they have when they taste it for the first time, and they're like, hot damn, this is as good as I can buy in the store.
Yeah.
And
Better. Better
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, and seeing them, uh, delight in that, and seeing them, reach a goal of theirs and helping them to attain it. It's pretty rewarding for me.
Nice.
Just like handing out them toys to the kids, helping.
I lost you.
We're all children
Lost
at
all you.
heart. We're all children at heart, and helping shiners is, just like handing out presents to those kids, just seeing them smile and happy for the first time and something they've done. Well, you can't hear me.
I can't hear you.
You can't.
We lost.
Moonshine, it's your lame name. Lost in shadows, playing games. Sipping shine, it's the nectar of life. A twisted soul where horror doesn't end. In the shadows where the monsters hide, a man dwells deep where darkness sides. His eyes are hollow, his beard is pale. A creature of the night, a tragic tale. Moonshine, they call it my chilly side. Lost in the movies from dark to light. Sipping shine, it's the nectar of life. A twisted soul where horror doesn't end.
What was that?
Okay, recording resumed. Well,
All
we're
right.
back from some technical difficulties there. Damn.
I'm blowing up his equipment, man. This sexy voice is just
That's exactly what it was.
yeah.
So we were on the rewarding aspect here. I know that recently you did actually play a good Santa, right?
Yeah, I played.
How rewarding was that?
Yeah, that was awesome. Dan Gray put together a benefit concert, and we collected some money through that and through some other donations and other avenues, and put together some money and some toys. And he and some friends of his and myself went to, and some people that live there. Marcus was there, and Michael Bowen was there, and so we went to place called Old Fort, North Carolina, which is just outside of Asheville, and in one of those communities that got wiped out. It's the town, everything, washed away. Most everything's gone. A few things, and some of their downtown was salvaged, in the old part of town and stuff. But a lot of residential, got wiped away. Very tough scene situation. People, and I look back now, that was just a few weeks ago, and just before Christmas, I guess on the 21st or 21st or 2nd, just before Christmas. And, I look back and think of the people that were living in tents, man, and, they're still in tents, and it's going to be like 8 degrees tomorrow there. It's,
Yeah.
it's got to be tough on those families and those kids. And, some of them coming in, a little bit dirty, they haven't been able to, bathe every day, and life's been tough for a lot of those kids, and being able to, bring a smile to their face and have them come up and give me a big hug, and, it meant a lot. It was very heartwarming.
That's good. That is
Yep.
That's very rewarding there. I mean, I can see that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was very touching, some of those kids, yeah, it was awesome.
Now, throughout your years of moonshining, has there been any time where you faced any kind of legal issues with making liquor at all?
Well, we've had to run, when we did a lot in the woods and stuff. People would hear us out back, or they'd see smoke and, come to the smoke. We were doing a lot of fire, distillations with fire. We didn't have propane and turkey fryers and all that shit. So, we didn't have electrical, that we could plug elements in. We didn't have any of that. So we did a lot with fire, and that's a whole new challenge in and of itself, is using fire and coals. But getting the fire started, once we got it to a certain heat and temperature, you wouldn't have as much smoke, and that was when it was best to start using it. But getting to that point, there'd always be a little smoke, and they'd hear us in our motorcycles, going back into the woods and come chase us and stuff. We did a lot on the riverbank. You know, we'd sit down there and fish and shine and smoke our cigars and stuff to keep the mosquitoes away, and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun.
Damn.
But yeah, we got chased off cops a few times, but never close calls or anything. We always ran, but we got chased a few times, but nothing serious. I'd say some people knew what we were doing and thought it was cute.
Oh, it's cute. Look a little chill on the riverside.
Yeah, get them out there shining like little moonshiners. How cute. I mean, it's something that was so common there that in high school chemistry we actually did fermentation. Our teacher knew. You know, she was a brilliant lady, lover. She was wonderful, and she knew that she was in an area that was a thing that a lot of people did, and she knew a lot of those students were eventually going to do it. So she's like, well, I guess if they're going to do it, they got to be safe about it. So we learned, she taught us about distillation and the science end of it, and that was the beginning of the science for me. As far as that aspect, I think it's my junior, senior year in high school. Yeah, it's my senior year. I took physics my junior year. So my senior year of high school is when I really started learning more about the science end of it, and we distilled in class, but we didn't get a sample or anything like that. It had to immediately go to the sink and out, and it was one of those little things that to get by the laws. There was no consumption allowed, and probably using some of those beakers and flasks and stuff that we were using, and probably a good thing that we didn't, because there's probably some contamination in there.
Now, if you had any, I would say, hopes for the future of moonshining or home distillation, what would they be?
Well, hopefully, I know there's some questions. Some people are talking about the Supreme Court, of course. Talking about the constitutionality of moonshine and distilling. I know that making it legal will take the fun out of it for a lot of people, because they like that outlaw breaking the rules, kind of aspect of it, and kind of skirting laws, and a lot of people like that. They like that excitement of taking those risks and getting by with it. Breaking the law, man, and making liquor. It's a big thing for a lot of people, and it does add an element of excitement and thrill and risk to it, which even now, I think growing up, 30 years ago, if you said, I'm going to be online telling everybody what I'm doing, it'd be like, hell no, nobody's finding this shit out. You're going to have to know me well to know this part of my life. But, here I am 30 years later telling everybody everything about my past and everything. And I really don't care at this point in my life. I mean, I think it's a pursuit of happiness kind of thing. I think as far as constitutionality goes, I think, there's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I think this is part of our pursuit of happiness. We had some whiskey rebellions in the past, and a lot of our forefathers were distillers, and I don't think that they would have wanted distilling to be illegal, or to have to jump through so many hoops to do it. I'm sure as shrewd businessmen, they would have probably liked the limiting factor of being able to limit others from doing it and then be able to do it themselves. But the true patriots and constitutionalists would have all agreed this is something everybody should be able to do. You can make wine, you can make beer, but you can't liquor. It's all about money and tax. So,
Oh yeah.
We know, but they try to say, oh, it's the safety factor. It's the
Yeah,
safety.
yeah.
Yeah, bullshit. It's like the speed limits. They didn't set the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit so it would be safe for us to travel. They did that because of the energy crisis in the 70s. They
Yep.
wanted to slow us down so we wouldn't go through so much gasoline and depend on so much foreign oil. So that's, yeah.
Look where we're at. Look where we're at now.
Yeah.
Now there are a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings about moonshiners and the moonshining community as a whole.
Right.
If you could pick one thing that you could get the population as a whole to understand one of the misconceptions, what would it be?
I'd say that there's a lot of intelligent, distinguished people that do it. It's not a backwoods, redneck only kind of thing. Those are my brothers. I'm one of them, but there's other people out there other than us that do it, and a lot of new things being made, new things created, innovations. But I would say that as a whole, people would probably think we're a bit wilder and more outlawed than what we actually are. Um, uh, I'd say a lot of people would be pretty pleasantly surprised. I've had a lot of people that kind of surprised me that want to learn about winemaking and stuff, and they're a little bit interested in distillation and stuff too. But I mean, these are like bank presidents and insurance executives and people like that. So there's a lot of interest, uh, outside of just a bunch of outlaw shiners. There's a lot of interest, and I think as it becomes more accepted, kind of like marijuana. 40 years ago, marijuana was, it was like heroin, man. I mean, it was just the worst thing ever. It was classified as a hallucinogen, and anybody that did that was just crazy. Wild people. But now it's become more accepted. Um, Hopefully, someday, distilling and making shine will be as equally accepted, and the people that do it won't be as considered such rebel outlaws that we were when we were growing weed, back in the day. Um, but my hopes are that people just understand that we're just normal people like everybody else. We just, um, enjoy doing things micromanaging. Some of us do it for the micromanaging aspect. Some people are just true do-it-yourselfers. Some people are just curious and want to learn and maybe have a new hobby. But for whatever odd reason, people get into it. Once they're in it and they join the brotherhood of distillers, shiners, pretty much all people are fairly welcomed across the board. I don't see a lot of hate. There's always going to be the some, that ruin it, but it's a good community of a lot of people, a lot of variety, in the people that you see in it, and I think it's one of the best things about it.
I agree. It's been a fun ride too. I mean, it's been awesome.
It is. It's a very rewarding, very enjoyable hobby, especially wine. That's making the wine, and I know a lot of people haven't. They're younger, like I was. I really wasn't interested in a lot of wine when I was in my 20s and 30s and early 40s, but mid 40s things started changing a little bit. 50s, it's I'm getting into this, and having the internet there to help educate me and give me all the info that I could, soak in like a sieve. I loved it. It's when the internet came, that changed everything for me.
Yeah.
That opened up a whole world to me.
Now, as we start winding things down here, Santa, if there was one thing you could tell somebody that's wanting to break into moonshining, making liquor, home distillation, uh, what would it be?
Say, don't be afraid to try different things, and at the same time, respect what you're doing and research, because there really is a lot of things that you can do that can be harmful. There's certain you know plants and veg, plants in the woods that people want to use for making their own gins and experimenting with certain things. So, and there's a lot of those same leaves and barks and stuff that can kill you or hurt you. So, and everybody's wanting to come up with something new, something different, something unique. And that I love that. And at the same time, it scares me because there's a reason that a lot of things haven't been tried, but they actually have. And we found out like in the late 1800s that that's kind of toxic. So we don't use those barks anymore or those leaves anymore because a lot of those barks and leaves are toxic, and it's just to keep the animals from eating all the leaves off the trees, so
Yep.
they made themselves toxic to animals so they wouldn't get, overeaten and over I don't know, over consumed and killed the tree off. So they, over time, they adapted and evolved into, poisonous leaves and bark. So, beetles don't bore into it, and birds and giraffes don't eat them, and whatever. But
Neither should we.
but just research what you do. Don't just try things without asking. I think having certain people to ask that are knowledgeable or can research for you, and do a lot of research and really consider the sources. A lot of people, especially now on the internet, there's so much garbage information out there, so
Oh,
much garbage information. Um, do a lot of research and really look at the source of the information that you're getting as much as the information that you're getting, because it's
yep.
critical. But there's a lot of things I love. People trying new things, but most everything's been tried. There's a few things that have not been tried, and there's a good reason for some of them, and for some others, it's just something nobody ever thought about. Like my worm mucus moonshine. It sounds gross, but my daughter was inside having this little science thing in high school and stuff, and she was asking me about these worms and stuff, and we did a little research on them, and I was reading about this mucus that these worms put off, and it was used to feed their offspring, and I was looking at all the stuff, and I'm like, well, damn, you could probably ferment that shit, and I'll research and find out it's used in the cosmetic industry and used, it's fairly well used in a lot of things that I never realized it. Most people don't realize research worm mucus. I mean,
So confused.
yeah. So, always keep an open eye and listen to new things people talk about and try some different things, but be careful when you do. And that's my biggie, trying to make it safe for everybody. I want everybody to enjoy the hobby, and I don't want to read any horror stories about, one of my buddies, trying to distill some kind of bark or leaf and make a leaf gin out of it, or bark, and you know they're in the hospital or worse.
Yeah,
That'd be horrible.
it is. Would be terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Santa, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me and sitting down and toughing through this technical difficulties and all the yes and everything.
Took us a few days to get us a date and time set, but I'm glad we were able to.
No, we got it going. We got it going.
Yep.
But I thank you so much for it, and I'll see you next time.
All right. Now my question is, do I get to interview you next time? We need to interview the host here eventually. We're covering all the characters in the militia. You just happen to be a pretty popular character in the game.
When everybody else is done, then it'll be my turn.
No, we gotta get you in there early, man.
We'll talk about that.
All right, brother. Well, thanks for having me on here, and sign on, everybody.
Everybody out there, take it easy.
Yep.
Peace, chicken grease, baby.
That's right.